welcome to all the students learning from this video class. In this video class, we are going to learn about the types of immunity. This is the second session of the paper Immunology and Animal Biotechnology for 5th semester biotechnology students. I am Dr. G. Hema, Faculty of Biotechnology, working at the Maharani Science College for Women, Bengaluru. Before we go into the details of the current session, let us recapitulate what was discussed in the previous session. We learned what exactly is immunology, what is the function of immune system, and how the science of immunology came into existence and how it grew by leaps and bounds due to the great contributions of several scientists. We also learned about the concepts of vaccination, antigens, antibodies, etc. And also we discussed the different applications of immunology in day-to-day life as well as in research and development. In the current session, I will be discussing the types of immunity and the components of these two types of immunity. As discussed earlier, immunity is a state of being protected from infectious agents. The immune system of vertebrates is broadly classified into innate immune system and adaptive immune system. It is very important to remember and understand that these two systems work in intricate interdependency and interrelated nature. The adaptive immune system is again classified into cell-mediated immunity and humoral immunity. Another classification of the adaptive immune system is into active and passive immunity. We are going to learn about the details of these classification in this session as well as the following sessions. Let us see what is this innate immune system. The innate immune system is the component of immunity that is present before the onset of infection. Most components of this innate immune system are not specific to any particular pathogen or infectious agent. Instead, they are capable of recognizing patterns of molecules presented by frequently encountered pathogens. This less specific component of the innate immune system comprises of four major components or contributors. The first one being anatomic barriers. The anatomic barriers include skin and the mucous membrane. The next component of this is physiological barriers. The various physiological conditions of the body like temperature and pH that also act as a mechanism of protection to the individual. The third component is formed by phagocytic barriers. This type of barriers are comprising of different types of phagocytic cells. The last barriers being inflammatory barriers. Inflammatory barriers is a mechanism by which if any pathogen gains entry into the body, how it is eradicated and prevented from establishing a disease condition. Moving on to the details of the anatomic barriers. These are also called as physical or mechanical barriers. The two components of this are the skin and the mucous membrane. Skin is the outermost covering of the body. The skin is formed of different layers, majorly the epidermis and dermis. The outermost layer, the epidermis, consists of again an outer layer and inner layer. This outermost layer of the epidermis comprises of tightly packed dead cells which again are coated by a waterproof keratin layer. Now this thick keratin layer and the dead cells is almost impossible for microbes to penetrate into. That means intact skin itself is a major barrier to the entry of pathogens. Only when there is a cut or wound in the skin or through insect bite can microbes gain entry into the tissues and they cannot penetrate intact skin. Even if pathogens gain entry into the outer layers, they are again obstructed by the inner dermis. Dermis comprises of several different types of cells, of which one important type is the sebaceous glands. The sebaceous glands secrete sebum, which is an oily substance of a low pH, which ranges between 3 to 5. This acidic pH does not favor the growth of most of the microbes. Moving on to the innermost layering of our organ systems, which is the mucous membrane. Mucous membrane starts from the conjunctiva, the respiratory tract, alimentary canal, as well as the genitourinary system. This innermost lining of the organ systems of the body is again possessing a outermost layer called as epithelial layer. Most of the epithelial cells of the mucous lining possess cilia, which are hair-like substances and are capable of movement. The movement of cilia propels pathogens out of the body. That means it prevents their establishment in the tissues. Also, several secretions by the mucous membrane like the saliva, tears and mucus flush out the pathogens from the system, again preventing their establishment in the tissues. Substances like lysozyme in the mucous secretions, the secretions of the mucous membrane, prevent bacterial growth by degrading their cell wall. Also, there are several non-pathogenic substances, non-pathogenic microorganisms that are beneficial to the host, and these beneficial microorganisms outcompete the pathogenic organisms and do not allow their colonization of the tissues. This is how the microbes are prevented at the entry level itself by both the skin and the mucous membrane. Moving on to the next type of barriers comprised by the physiological conditions of the body. The human body temperature of 37 degrees Celsius is not congenial for growth of many pathogens or microbes. That is how most microorganisms that are capable of causing disease in other species are not capable of causing diseases in humans. Similarly, each species has its own body temperature, which itself is a barrier to infectious agents. Similarly, the high level of acidity found in the stomach kills most of the pathogens that gain entry through the fluids or food intake. There are several soluble substances that are produced in the body like lysozyme, interferons and the complementary proteins. Lysozyme is an enzyme which degrades the bacterial cell wall, thereby preventing their survival in the host. Interferons are antiviral substances, whereas complement proteins are also serum inactive proteins which have antimicrobial properties. So the presence of certain species-specific physiological conditions is highly essential for protection of the organisms from infection. The next barriers are formed by phagocytic cells. Phagocytosis is a process, I hope the students remember from their lower classes, that phagocytosis is a process where a cell engulfs particulate matter and destroys it by digestion due to enzymes. That particulate matter can be also foreign cells or microbial cells. There are several types of cells present in the vertebrate body which are capable of phagocytosis. For example, neutrophils, monocytes, macrophages and dendritic cells, which are the major phagocytic cells. These cells engulf foreign cells or microbial cells. They have a set of signaling mechanisms to identify these foreign cells, based on which they engulf these foreign cells by using their membrane as extensions. Once they are engulfed and a phagosome is formed inside the phagocytic cell, digestion of these foreign cells occurs due to lytic enzymes. and that is how the microbial cells get killed or destroyed. The last type of barriers present in the innate immune system are inflammatory barriers. Let us see about the process of inflammation in detail. Inflammation comprises of 4 cardinal signs, including vasodilation or erythema, that is redness, then increased capillary permeability called swelling or edema, followed by influx of phagocytic cells and release of chemical mediators causing development of heat and pain, which also termed as calor and dolor. So let us look into the details of this phenomena or event called as inflammation. There are 2 types of inflammation, namely localized inflammation or systemic inflammation. This picture depicts a localized inflammatory response. Whenever there is entry of a pathogen, in this example a bacteria, through an insect bite or some other means, and penetrates the skin and other tissues, wherever there is such penetration, the blood vessels undergo constriction. Those blood vessels that carry blood away from the site of pathogen entry undergo constriction. That means they stop carrying out most blood from that region of pathogen entry to the other parts of the body. That is how the spread of the bacterial cell in the host body is prevented. Now, because of this constriction, around the site of pathogen entry, there is a swelling of the blood vessels. This causes redness or erythema. This is also called as vasodilation. Now, when the blood vessels undergo vasodilation, that is when they swell, the blood vessel walls become thinner and have an increased permeability. This is called as edema. This leads to accumulation of fluid on the other part of the blood vessel, on the other side of the constriction. So this is called as edema. Due to increased permeability of the blood vessel walls, cells are released from the blood into the tissue spaces surrounding the entry of the pathogen. Now, these phagocytic cells try to engulf and destroy the bacteria or other pathogens that have gained entry into the host body. During this process, these phagocytic cells also release several active chemical mediators responsible for destruction of the pathogen. As a part of this process, some of the host tissue is also damaged. This leads to development of heat in that region and also pain. So these are the 4 different important signs of inflammation, and inflammation is actually a protective process. Though the host suffers a little discomfort and pain, this actually is a protective process. Now let us see what are the factors that influence innate immunity. As we already discussed, the factors or components of innate immunity are already present even before the infection or entry of the pathogen occurs. Young children or young individuals have active innate immunity components, and the protective ability of these components slowly declines with aging. The nutritional factors are another important factors influencing the innate immune mechanisms. Malnutrition generally lowers the ability of the innate immune system to protect the individual. Then hormonal influences. Steroid hormones, when people are under treatment for certain situations using steroid hormones, their immune system is generally weakened. And gender also affects immune system. Generally, males are more prone to infectious agents compared to females. Now let us understand what is the other type of immune system, that is acquired immunity. This acquired immunity is also called as specific or adaptive immunity, which is characterized by 4 important features. namely specificity, diversity, memory, and self and non-self recognition. These are the features which also distinguish the acquired immune system from the innate immune system. Specificity. The end molecules or cells of the acquired immune system are highly specific in their nature of interaction with the pathogens or toxins. The specificity is so sensitive that even a single amino acid difference in the pathogen or the toxin can be distinguished by the end molecules of the adaptive immune system. Similarly, diversity is another important feature of the adaptive immune system. The adaptive immune system can generate millions of molecules and cells that have identification ability for diverse molecules. That means as many antigens are there, as many antibodies are produced. We are going to see how this operates in the following sessions. Then memory. Immunological memory is a very important characteristic feature of the adaptive immune system. So once an individual encounters a particular pathogen or a toxin, the immune system responds and reacts to this antigen, maybe a pathogen or a toxin, and also remembers that particular antigen for several years to come in the life of the individual. This memory may last for some years to the lifetime of the individual. Another important feature of this acquired immune system is the ability to distinguish between self and non-self molecules. Self molecules are all those molecules which belong to the host or to those which the host is continuously exposed and are harmless to the host. Whereas non-self molecules are those that are different from that of the host molecules. Usually foreign particles, maybe of microbes or plant molecules, are recognized as non-self molecules. This distinction is very important in the successful operation of the acquired immune system. The major components of this adaptive immunity are formed by lymphocytes and antigen presenting cells. Lymphocytes again are of two types, the T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes. The T cells protect from parasites or intracellular pathogens, and the B cells attack the invaders from outside the cell through the antibodies that are produced by the B cells. Whereas antigen presenting cells, the other important component of the adaptive immune system, function as a presentation system for the antigens to the T cells. Most of the antigen presenting cells have phagocytic ability. They destroy the pathogen or the antigen as well as present parts of that antigen to the T cells. T cells can recognize antigens only when they are presented by the antigen presenting cells. The antigens that are presented by the APCs or the antigen presenting cells are presented as a complex with MHC molecules on the surface of the antigen presenting cell. Only such a complex of antigen with the MHC molecule is recognized by the T cells, whereas B cells can recognize soluble antigens that are freely floating in the body fluids. These soluble antigens may be parts of the pathogen or toxins that are secreted by the pathogens. Another classification of the immune system is based on the origin of the immune molecules, namely the active immunity and passive immunity. Active immunity is a system where the immune molecules, that is the T cell receptors or the T cells and antibodies, originate from the affected individual or the host itself. Whereas passive immunity is a condition where the immune molecules and cells are produced in another host or animal body and then transferred to the affected individual. Active immunity is of two types. naturally acquired and artificially acquired. A situation for naturally acquired active immunity is that which occurs throughout the life of the individual by natural exposure to the antigens around the individual. Every day throughout the life of the individual is exposed to several antigens in the environment, in the food, in the fluid that is taken into the body, and all these antigens induce an immune response. This is called as naturally acquired active immunity. To all those antigens, the host immune system produces immune molecules and cells. Artificially acquired active immunity is a situation exemplified by vaccination. In vaccination, there is a purposeful injection or introduction of a pathogen in heat-killed or attenuated form, or even a part of the pathogen that is not virulent is introduced into the host system by artificial means like injection or oral drops, and the immune system is evoked to produce an immune response. This is called as artificially acquired active immunity, which is exemplified by vaccination. Coming to passive immunity, naturally acquired passive immunity is exemplified by feeding of breast milk to newly born infants. So, once an individual is born, it takes some time for the immune system to reach a state of capability to produce antibodies. Till then, the baby is protected only by the antibodies that are produced in the mother but reach the baby through the breast milk. That is why it is very important for the babies to be fed by the mothers, both for nutrition as well as protection from infectious agents. Artificially acquired passive immunity is exemplified by passive immunotherapy. In this, those affected individuals, any infected individual, is not capable of producing antibodies or immune cells sufficiently to overcome the disease condition. In such situations, antibodies that are produced in another animal body or host are isolated, purified, and injected into the affected individual to protect them from those infectious agents. This is called as artificially acquired passive immunity. So, to summarize, in this video class, we discussed what are innate and adaptive immunity, what are the components of innate immune system and the adaptive immune system, as well as the major differences between the two types. To recapitulate again, the major differences between the two types of immune systems, that is innate and adaptivity, lie in that all those components of innate immune system are present even before the onset of infection. They are not specific. Instead, they recognize patterns of molecules of frequently encountered pathogens. They act as a barrier at the entry level itself. That means they try to prevent the entry and establishment of disease-causing organisms in the host. Whereas the adaptive immunity fights those pathogens and microbes that have gained entry into the host body already. The adaptive immune system is highly specific, is capable of generating a vast diversity of protective molecules and cells. It also can remember which is lacking by the innate immune system. Innate immune system lacks a memory. The adaptive immune system also is capable of distinction between the self and non-self molecules. These are the important differences between the innate and adaptive immune systems. We also learned about what is active acquired immunity and passive acquired immunity. Let us have a look at the important terms that were discussed in this video class. We discussed inflammation, the process of protection and a part of innate immune system. The four cardinal signs of inflammation are swelling, rise in temperature, pain and redness. Then we also discussed what are the components of the adaptive immune system, namely the T cells, B cells and antigen presenting cells. We also had a brief discussion about phagocytosis, the process of cell eating or engulfment of particulate matter by the immune cells. I advise the students to refer to these reference books which will give a deeper insight into the immune mechanisms. Thank you for listening to this video class and wish you happy learning.